It does if the first premise is true, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. It logically follows.
Yeah, but, but the cause hasn't got to be God.
Well, remember I gave an argument for thinking that this cause is timeless, spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal.
I think it's a computer.
Well, that wouldn't, computers are designed by people.
No, this is a self-designing computer.
Timeless.
Timeless. Oh,
well, then,
no.
Okay, see, what you're doing is what you're calling a computer is really God.
Oh, I'd be absolutely shocked, but I would change my mind. But I need to think a tiny bit of evidence would be a very good beginning.
He's offered you evidence.
No, that's not evidence.
William Lane Craig has an amazing debate with Louis Wolpert about the God Delusion and if there is evidence for God, and it's absolutely amazing. So make sure to watch to the end, also because I have a Bible verse to tie all of this together. Let's get into it.
Did he say anything at all tonight that made you think, well, there's something there?
No, I didn't think these were very good arguments that we heard tonight.
But all right, let me do my bit then.
Yes.
He asked you endlessly to answer his question about what came before God. You tell us that God, without a shred of evidence, if I may say, as an independent chairman here, you tell us that God created the universe. You
gave an argument for that.
Well,
you gave an argument for it, you produced no evidence for it. Clearly, because you can't. How can it? Anyway, all right, put that to one side. But what he wanted to know was who therefore created God.
Mm-hmm. Well, to answer that question again, God is, by definition, a self-existent, timeless, necessary being. So if there is a God, yes, if there is a God, we'll talk about possibilities. If there is a God, there cannot be a cause of such an entity, any more than there can be a cause of the number 7 or the property of being blue. Things that begin to exist, that come into being, have causes. But something that's eternal and necessary.
So God was always there, and at some point along the line, although there was no time then, so clearly I can't say at some point in time. Which
very
makes
good. That's right.
Which makes it mildly more difficult to pursue this, but nonetheless.
But that's right. Yeah.
At some point, God decided that he'd create this whole thing.
Rather, I would say not that he decided, but at some point he did create the whole thing.
Well, presumably, yeah, all right. He created the whole thing. Yeah. You haven't got a better explanation of why the universe came. Well, you don't know. You said so.
Sorry, there's nothing to be ashamed about admitting ignorance. I don't understand the Big Bang. I vaguely, I've discussed it with people. And if there are things that we don't understand, we just have to say we don't know. You don't have to invent mystical creatures in order to do it.
Wow.
You don't have to invent mystical creatures.
Sorry? No.
You don't have to invent mystical creatures.
No, I don't think you do. I just think you have to say you don't know and keep on trying to find out. And maybe we'll never find out.
Yeah. And if you found it was a supernatural being?
Oh, I'd be absolutely shocked, but I would change my mind. But I'd need to think a tiny bit of evidence would be a very good beginning.
He's offered you evidence.
No, that's not evidence.
Certainly, there's more than a tiny bit of evidence on the table that the universe began to exist.
That's total speculation.
Well, the astronomer royal Martin Rees would beg to differ with you.
Well, he can beg if he wishes, and I like Martin very well.
Wow.
In his book, Just Six Numbers, Martin Rees says
I know Martin well.
Yes, well, and he says that the modern cosmology is as firmly established a science as the geology of the Earth. Yes. This is not a matter of airy-fairy speculation.
Now we're back into the constants again. And
no, this is Big Bang, not fine-tuning. We're talking about now.
So what's
his book was on fine-tuning, but he makes this statement in the course of
what? That the Big Bang must have been caused by someone.
No, that the...
I bet he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
No, he takes an agnostic attitude, as far as I know.
Well, that's good. That's at least...
What he actually said, what Martin Rees actually does, as far as I can tell, and it's above most of us mere mortals, I think, certainly it's above me anyway, is he speculates on this possibility of the multiverse and the idea of what's that ghastly film in which we're all just in a computer, The Matrix, isn't it?
Right.
And he says we just could be kind of players in a... You and I argued this morning about the chess game. We used an analogy that eventually ran into the sand. My fault, that. It was a hopeless analogy to begin begin with. But the Matrix one isn't bad, and he conjectures that this designer is kind of playing a computer game, really, and we're one of a million, a billion, a trillion universes. And it just kind of happens that way. As far as I'm concerned, I've read a bit of what he said. I don't recall him saying God did all that.
Oh, no, not at all.
But you'll see here, they press him even more, and they're like, if all-knowing computer created us and he's outside of time, space, and matter, essentially they just try to make fun of the Christian God. But also, for them to say, I don't know, how do you know God's not in the place where you don't know? It's very difficult for me to say and hear when people claim, oh, there's no evidence. I think there's just as much evidence for a God creating the universe compared to nothing creating the universe.
And he certainly didn't get into Jesus as being
No, certainly not. I was simply saying that this is not a mere matter of speculation, that there's more than a tiny bit of evidence on the table.
But is he saying
evidence for what?
Evidence for a beginning of the universe.
Yes.
Well, we know that. Nobody disputes
All right, well, that's what I'm offering in this first argument, is the evidence.
But
why?
because there's a
'Cause nobody
beginning
disputes
doesn't
it.
imply a God.
It does if the first premise is true, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. It logically follows.
Yeah,
that
but it
therefore,
doesn't. But the cause hasn't got to be God.
well, remember I gave an argument for thinking that this cause is timeless,
Yes, I know.
spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal.
I think it's a computer.
Well, that wouldn't. Computers are designed by people. I mean,
No, this is a self-designing computer.
timeless?
Timeless.
well, that's a contradiction in terms.
Why is it time? What's contradictory about it?
A computer has to function. It takes
Oh
time.
no, this is a special computer.
Yeah, but it has to be logically coherent.
Oh, it's logically coherent.
Yes, you have to be logically.
They're
no,
making
this-
fun of his argument, which is just not cool, dude. I have a computer that's outside of space, time, and matter. This is special. That's literally just making fun of God.
It is amazing.
No, besides, it would have to be, as I said, a personal being.
No.
And a computer is a physical.
Not this computer.
Object.
Oh,
Well, then,
no.
Okay, see, what you're doing is what you're calling a computer is really God. A non-physical,
Dang.
It's just another word if you rob it of all the.
That's he got him there. He's just like, oh, great. Oh, man, you're right. That's the internet. Yeah. I mean, kind of.
That make it a computer.
Surely Gates is God. Come on, go on.
What, go on with my computer?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really saying.
I mean, but he's got a point when he
No,
says
he
if
hasn't.
what
I'm
you're.
saying that I don't know what caused it. And he claims he does know what caused it.
But he's saying more than that. He's saying you've got to prove.
No, I don't have to prove.
Yes, you do.
I have to admit ignorance.
Well, if you admit
Well, that's
ignorance
not
and
exactly
he admits
right.
knowledge, as it
He
were.
hasn't got knowledge.
Well, but he believes he has knowledge. So if
that's the whole nature of belief.
If we have two people, one of whom says, I don't know, God Almighty, I hate all these absurd examples, but I go to two doctors, right? One of them, and I've got a pain in my wherever it is, and the first doctor says, I've no idea what's causing it, clear off, and the other one says, actually, it's because you've got a pimple in your thingy. Well, you know, and moreover, because this is what his God does, and moreover, I can cure it, I'll go for the second doctor.
No, but it's not saying a pimple in your thingy. He's saying there's a really special,
How do you know?
unimaginable,
You don't know my
supernatural thing in your thingy. That's a problem.
William Lane Craig is pointing to a creator that actually solves all of mankind's problems. It solves the reason why we were here, the reason why we were created, and people are looking for a meaning. They're searching for meaning and purpose and value, and God fills those voids, fills those needs.
To accept the idea of anything that exists beyond nature.
Yes.
Well, that is begging the question in favor of atheism. That just is presupposing that atheism is true. And that's what the debate's
Well, you're
about.
presupposing that God is true.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm giving arguments for God's existence. And what I'm looking for is arguments for atheism. And this isn't, I mean, lots of atheists give arguments for their view. You know, the problem of evil and suffering in the world.
Oh, no, that's a terrible argument.
Well, that's what I notice that's what Richard Dawkins says too. Dawkins doesn't use that argument,
absurd.
but that is J.L. Mackie of Oxford, he used that argument.
Oh, it must be a philosopher.
Well, It may, Lewis, be a terrible argument, but it's a pretty powerful argument when you're arguing against a Christian God who's supposed to be all merciful, isn't it?
You know, what? That there's
Evil and suffering.
So you mean we must blame God for all the suffering in the world too?
Well, I don't think that. I'm saying that atheists...
So who, if not God?
Offer arguments for atheism, and this would be an example. The atheist can't get off the hook here. He's making a knowledge claim.
But
God does not exist.
Oh, right.
See, that's a knowledge claim. It's the agnostic who makes no knowledge claim.
I don't say God does not exist. I say there's no evidence for God.
All right, well, then that's mere agnosticism.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
No, we atheists say we do not believe that God exists.
Well, that's compatible with God existing, you see.
No.
That's mere agnosticism.
No, it's not.
Atheism says that God does not exist, which is a claim to know something and therefore requires justification.
I'm telling
True.
you, this atheist doesn't say this. He just says there's no evidence for God.
All right, well, how would you differentiate?
Then you can't say he doesn't exist then. You have to say whether or not that's not atheism if you say we don't know. That's more agnosticism.
Yourself then from an agnostic?
Agnostic says I'm clueless as to whether God exists or not. And I'm a coward to try and make up my mind.
Oh, no, well, now that's pejorative.
Yes, it is pejorative, and I mean it to be pejorative.
All right, what about the non-cowardly agnostic, like Bertrand Russell, say, who says, I don't know whether God exists, I don't know whether God does not exist.
Well, that's agnostic, yes.
Well, that's what you are.
No.
Well, okay, then give us, if you're not you're not that, then you need to give us some warrant for the belief that there is no God.
No. I just said
Otherwise,
I know of no evidence or any reason to believe in God whatsoever. This is a supernatural being for which I know of no evidence, and he's done nothing that I know of in the last 2,000 years.
Why did you lose your faith?
Me?
We know why. We know why
Bill
found it.
It's shameful. When I was young, I used to pray to God to help me with various things. My prayers weren't answered, so it was purely pragmatic. I gave it up.
Wow. And that's what literally every person, what it really comes down to is God didn't give me what I really wanted. And it's difficult. We ask God for a lot of things, and we think that God should answer all of our prayers because we want God to be along with our will, but instead we should be trying to get along with God's will. It's very difficult. It's very hard. I get it. Like sometimes it would be nice to have a little bit more money. Sometimes it would be nice to have a few more things or whatever. And it doesn't mean that's in God's best interest.
Sorry.
No, Bill's was a red-haired beauty in the front row. At least I may be slightly simplifying what you told me.
Or exaggerating.
Or possibly even. Listen, there is one basic, you may have basic laws for God and things, and there is a basic law of journalism. And we all observe it, I promise you this. First simplify, then exaggerate. I hold to that. I hold to. So where we are, and I mean, you use much of your book to deny the circularity of your argument. What you've been trying to do tonight, forgive me if I've got this wrong, Lewis, is prove that it is in fact entirely a circular argument.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Tell him why.
Tell him why it's a circular.
Yeah.
Why it's a circular argument?
Why is
because you want to believe, you need an explanation for things that you don't understand, like why the universe exists. And you're too frightened to admit that you don't know.
That's not the definition of what a circular argument is.
Well, it's circular-ish.
No, a circular argument is when your only reason for believing a premise is that you already accept the conclusion. That's what you're doing when you say there's nothing beyond nature, there is no supernatural. That's presupposing
no, but your argument
atheism.
is circular. That because there had to be a creator, therefore the creator had to be God.
No.
But you're doing the same thing! Right. God doesn't owe us anything.
No, I know, but I think that argument is totally false.
Well, then what you need to do,
we don't want to get
what
involved
you need
in
to
that
do,
again.
Professor Wolpert, is then to identify the false premise in the argument, because the logic is valid. The conclusion follows from the premises, so you have to show me which of the premises is false.
The premise is that there had to be a personal creator of the universe.
Okay, and then what? If you're going to argue that that's false, then you'll need to refute the two arguments that I gave for the personhood of the creator.
Oh, yes, well, there's no evidence for the personal.
Well, I gave two...
Oh, well, the moral one is absurd, because there's plenty of morality. You don't believe that's not a strong one. What's the other one?
Oh, no, I think, well, that wasn't the argument for the personhood, though. The other arguments actually do give you a personal creator and designer. The arguments were that it must be a timeless and spaceless being, and therefore cannot be physical or material. And the only things that we know of that can fit that description are either minds or abstract objects. And abstract objects...
Wait, how in the world did he say that morality is not a good one? I think that's the one that destroys all of the new atheism of all. Like, I'm sorry. Moral relativism is the worst. You can't tell someone that they are doing evil or doing bad if there's no complete right or wrong.
Don't cause things. The number 7 can't cause anything. Therefore, the cause of the universe must be a mind.
I'm very suspicious of anything that's timeless and spaceless.
Well, you may be suspicious, but that's not really an argument or a refutation.
I'm not a good physicist on this.
Well, all right, let's get into the moral bit.
Yes.
Because you, Lewis, offered us various illustrations, various arguments as to why we can arrive at a moral state. And effectively what you're saying, as I understand it, and you'll tell me I'm wrong, I'm sure, effectively you're saying we do these moral things because over a long enough period we have concluded that they're in our interest to do them.
Absolutely.
Right. Why do people do those things that are not in their selfish interest, but are clearly decent and good? Why do they sacrifice themselves in the cause of something from which they will benefit nothing?
We're into the whole thing, you know, about people's behavior, how the brain works, about sociology, about mental illness. There are all sorts of complications.
Have you never looked at somebody, have you never met anybody, and it might be a Mandela figure,
yes,
or it might be a Mother Teresa figure, or it might be an atheist, and said, actually, I don't know this person terribly well, don't know him at all, don't know anything about his medical background, whatever, but he's a good guy, good person, or
no, I think
good person.
No, I don't have to go to those great people. I can go to my partner and my friends and say they're good people.
Absolutely you can, and you can say they're good people. Why are they good people?
Because they help me a great deal and I like them.
Won't quite do in the case of Mandela.
Sure. Is that the basis of your moral system? Because they help you?
And help other people too.
Okay.
So it's their behavior. There is nothing, that you don't then go the extra step and say, why are they doing that? Well, even though it may not be in their best interest to do it.
Let's be clear that we don't really understand how people behave or why they behave.
He's offering you an explanation.
What, by a god? Oh, come on.
This is so unfair for him to be like, oh, by God, preposterous. That doesn't make any sense. So they completely have that idea completely thought as stupid or illogical. So then, of course, he's never going to think that's a logical argument. But his argument is, I'm sorry, people just do not do things in the best interest for themselves all the time. Because then people would, if they knew they could get away with stealing and no one else stole from them, they would constantly be doing it. Now we have obviously police and everything, but if they knew they would, what stops a person from, someone drops their wallet and then another person picks it up, what stops them from putting it in their pocket and walking away? But instead, for some reason, they go and bring it back to them. You can't just base everything off of that, because eventually someone's going to be like, well, actually, it benefits me more to take the wallet. I am short on cash this week. Of course, it's a miracle, you know?
Shout at me, it was his argument.
Sorry, I won't shout again. I can behave badly at times. I'm sorry.
Not at all.
No, to keep behaving badly.
But there are lots of people who are criminals who do all sorts of terrible things, and we don't fully understand why they do all those things. And some, people have breakdowns, they do all sorts of strange things, sure.
Could I clarify something about the argument? Because I think this is apt to lead to misunderstanding. My argument is not that belief in God is necessary in order to do good or live a moral life or be a decent chap. The argument has nothing to do about belief in God. The argument is that without God, there isn't any absolute standard of right and wrong, and therefore what we call moral values are just the spin-offs of sociobiological evolution. Altruism, like you mentioned, self-sacrificial behavior, a mother rushing into a burning building.
No, specifically not a mother to save a child, because there's a perfectly good reason for a mother saving the child.
Well, but if you say that, see, then again, you're still misunderstanding my argument. What I was going to say is that on the sociobiological point of view, that kind of altruistic behavior is just the selfish gene wanting to perpetuate itself, and it's the same kind of behavior you see in a troop of baboons, where you see what looks like altruistic behavior, or even in an ant heap, where fighter ants will sacrifice themselves for the good of the heap. My point is that on the atheistic view, that's all moral values are.
Is that right? Let's clear that
up. And I would like to ask...
Is there any difference, Lewis? You come back in 1 second, but let me just ask Lewis whether there is any difference between the altruistic behavior of a human being, somebody who may sacrifice him or herself for a cause which will bring them no particular benefit, and a baboon in a troop.
Well, there are occasions where there are groups of animals where there's someone who will scream when danger comes, therefore the thing. So these can be biologically determined, but also there's the whole complex of the nature of the sociology of the society and how different societies behave. And that's got nothing to do with God, that's complex sociology and biology.
Oh, so
and who imposed the complex biology? Where did that come from?
Well, evolution.
Right.
Yeah, we're back to the old...
No, see, that's my argument. That is all that moral values are on atheism, and that therefore, as I say, rape, child abuse, these may be socially inconvenient, or taboo.
As an atheist, I'm not a rapist.
Every atheist usually are amazing people, just like every Christian usually amazing people, but sometimes there's a lot of Christians, not say a lot, but there are Christians who are not good people either, who maybe identify as Christian and do lots of cultish or manipulating things. But the atheistic worldview is where you can't say something is right or wrong because morality is subjective. So that's the problem. They demonstrate that God's law is written in their hearts, for their own conscience and thoughts either accuse them or tell them what they are doing right.